Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. A week of deep joy but also painful sorrow ahead as scores of families separated by war and division in Korea almost 7 decades ago will be brought together in the coming hours at a mountain resort in North Korea. Pompeo to Pyongyang again. President Trump's national security advisor says the U.S. Secretary of State will make his 4th trip to Pyongyang soon. This comes as Washington looks to kickstart stalled talks on the regime's denuclearization. Plus, a golden start to the 2018 Asian Games for South Korea. The country snags 11 medals in total, including 2 golds in Taekwondo. We have all the latest from Jakarta. Only one place to start this morning, and that's with the reunion of separated families that begins in a matter of hours. It's the first such event in 3 years. The families heading north as we speak have lived with the painful thought that they might pass away before seeing their loved ones again. But finally, this afternoon, that will change for the roughly 90 South Koreans who were selected from a pool of tens of thousands of South Koreans who applied. Let's turn to our Park Hee-jun, who is one of the reporters who is covering the event for us this week. So Hee-jun, this week's reunions will undoubtedly deliver a wave of intense emotions for those involved, as well as those of us in Korea and around the world as well when we start seeing the footage. But let's start with what's been happening today.
Mark, today's going to be a ray of light for these separated families who've been waiting for this moment for so long since they were first torn apart some 70 years ago. Like you said, the first session of the 21st InterKorean Family Reunion begins today. For 3 days, these selected 89 South Koreans will be able to meet their families living north of the border, relatives they haven't been able to communicate with since the outbreak of the Korean War, and relatives they haven't been able to confirm alive until very recently. Now on Sunday, they've been staying here at the Hanwha Resort in Sokcho. Today after breakfast, they and their chaperones boarded buses and set off to North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort, which is the main venue for the event. Now, I could really see how nervous they were. It's something that they've only dreamt of since the moment they were ripped apart from their loved ones. It was as if the participants, mostly over 80 years old, with many older than 90, had been living to experience this moment for this rare chance to see their families again. They arrived at the Customs, Immigration and Quarantine Office of Koseong about half an hour ago, and they're expected to arrive at Mount Kumgang by 12:30 p.m. Korea time, just 2.5 hours away from now. After they have lunch, they'll finally get to meet their long-parted relatives for the first time in several decades, which will be the highlight of today's event. From 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. for 2 hours, the meeting room will be charged with emotion, smiles, and tears as the participants see the faces of their parted relatives for the first time since the two Koreas were divided. And after that meeting, they will end the day by attending a welcoming banquet hosted by North Korea. Today's reunion will be very dramatic, extremely emotional for the participants and for everyone watching the event in Korea and around the world. And for many, if not all of them, this will be their very last opportunity to see their relatives. So this will make this event that much more special and meaningful. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much to our Park Hee-jun for that comprehensive report there. We were just watching the video of the buses leave for North Korea. So there are no words to describe what these separated families have gone through for all these decades living apart, but at least some of them will soon be able to hug their brother, sister, son or daughter after almost an entire lifetime apart. Our Oh Jung-hee, who is travelling with the South Korean participants today, asked them before she left how it felt to have this wonderful opportunity to see their loved ones one last time. So why don't we take a look?
South Korean participants meeting their families in North Korea from Monday afternoon gathered in South Korea's northeastern city of Sokcho on Sunday. Some excited, others calm, complex feelings that are hard to put into words. Out of the 89 participants, only a few are lucky enough to meet their immediate families. They're upbeat but emotional, with questions popping into their minds.
I just found out that my son's alive. I'm wondering how and by whom he was raised. He's 71 now. I'm going to ask him, how did you live? Who raised you?
I want to ask them where our parents' graves are, and I want to know more about their families too.
At 101 years old, Park Sung-hyun was the oldest participant for this round of reunions. He's meeting with his daughter-in-law and a granddaughter from the north. His two brothers and one sister, as well as his son who are in the north, have all died. Park says it's apparent this will be the last time he gets to see them. He's prepared presents to give to his relatives, ranging from clothes and shoes to utensils and toiletries.
Well, I'm just going to tell them that I wanted to buy a lot more things but didn't have enough money. You always want to buy and give things to your family. That's how I feel.
Kim Byung-ho will also head to the north for the family reunions. He says that ever since he found out he was selected, he cannot sleep nor eat for weeks, thinking of finally meeting his younger sister.
When I first see her, I'm going to look at her hands to see how much hardship she's been through. I'll be crying a lot and telling her that we should see each other in heaven next time. How else can we meet? A part of me was glad I got this chance in my lifetime, but another part of me was scared about how I would have to part with her again. But I think I'm ready.
The Koreans who've been torn apart from each other for most of their lives are finally meeting on Monday. The next 3 days to come will be full of joy and tears for these people who are meeting with their loved ones for the first time in nearly 70 years. 오정희, Arirang News, Sokcho.
So let's take a closer look at the venue for the reunions. This round, the 21st of its kind, is happening at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort, which has been at the center of South-North relations pretty much ever since it opened. Kang Hyung-woo has some background on this scenic location.
Located on North Korea's southeast coast, the Mount Kumgang Resort is the main venue for this year's family reunions between the two Koreas. As the place where the first InterKorean summit took place in 2000, the resort has long been one of the most symbolic connections between the South and North. In particular, the resort has been the scene of family reunions on the Korean peninsula over the years. In an effort to promote the scenic beauty of Mount Kumgang and expand inter-Korean exchanges, the resort was built by South Korean firm Hyundai Asan in 1998 and drew over 1 million tourists from the south for the next 10 years. But after South Korean tourist Park Sung-hyun was shot dead by a North Korean soldier in July 2008, all tourists from the south ceased and the resort went from a bustling tourist hotspot to a ghost town. However, 10 years later, and things have changed. The agreement from April's InterKorean summit to hold the family reunions and its follow-up measures have revitalized the resort and the region in general. Recognized as having preserved its biodiversity, Mount Kumgang was even added to the list of UNESCO's World Network of Biosphere Reserves in late July. After the schedule for the 21st family reunion was set, there have been a number of renovations at the site, and senior South Korean officials have visited the area to examine preparations for the event. Now that the stage is set for the war-separated families to reunite, their time together at the Mount Kumgang Resort will be etched into the minds of the Korean people for years to come. Kang-young-woo, Arirang News.
As one of the efforts to implement the Panmunjom Declaration signed by the leaders of the two Koreas in April, the reunion of the separated families has been put together and will finally take place for the whole of this week. For more on how they will be carried out, our Lee Ji-won joins us in the studio today. So Ji-won, this is just the first of 2 rounds of reunions that are going to be taking place over the next few days.
Yes, Mark, the families that left for North Korea a short while ago are the ones in the first session, which will last until Wednesday. Now, for this round, 89 people in the south have been chosen to meet their loved ones in the north along with their chaperones. Now, in the second session, which will take place from August 24th to the 26th, that is from Friday to Sunday, is where 83 North Koreans will meet their relatives from the south who will cross into the north in the same way. Both rounds will follow the same basic schedule, so let's see how each day will roll out. On the first day, the South Korean participants will arrive at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort, the main venue. They'll get there by bus, entering the north through the Customs, Immigration and Quarantine Office in Gosong, Gangwon-do Province. The first reunions will take place after lunch. For 2 hours in the afternoon, the South and North Koreans will finally be reunited with members of their family whom they've missed for as long as they can remember. This will happen in a group setting in a public meeting room. And later, they'll attend welcoming banquet hosted in the first case by North Korea and in the second by South Korea. On day 2, the participants will get another 2-hour-long reunion, this one in private. And for the first time, they'll get to have lunch separately with their relatives in their own rooms, allowing for a more private experience. Afterwards, there will be another joint reunion in the public meeting room. And on the final day, the participants will see their relatives one last time before the South Koreans head back home. Each session gives them a total of 11 hours together.
So, Jiwon, the last reunion was 3 years ago. It's sad that it's been so long since we had one. Are there any big differences or changes compared to the previous one that happened in 2015?
Yes, Mark. Firstly, the total time they spent together has been shortened by an hour from 12 hours 3 years ago. 3 years ago. But if you look closely, an extra hour has been added for the families to spend time on their own, with 1 more hour given for them to have lunch in their rooms after a 2-hour private reunion. And a South Korean Unification Ministry official said the logistics and general program have been much simplified to better suit the elderly participants. For instance, everyone passing through the border normally needs to get off the bus for an inspection by the north. But with many of the South Korean participants needing wheelchairs to move, the north has agreed to simply inspect the elderly participants' documents inside the bus.
Well, that is a nice touch. We all have elderly relatives and we know how difficult it is for them to move around too much. So it's good that Pyongyang made that concession for them, and we can't wait to see the footage when it starts to come in of these reunions. It's sure to be a joyous but also sorrow-tinged event. Well, thank you very much for your report, Jiwon.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's move on to some of the rest of the day's news now. US President Donald Trump's national security advisor has revealed that US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will travel to Pyongyang again at some point in the near future. Speaking to a US news network on Sunday, John Bolton divulged what may be in store when Pompeo is in the North Korean capital. Lee Seung-jae reports.
In an interview with ABC News This Week on Sunday, John Bolton said the Trump administration expects U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will travel to Pyongyang soon, making his 4th visit to the communist state. With the top U.S. diplomat unable to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his 3rd visit last month, Bolton says the administration expects Pompeo will hold direct talks with Kim this time around. The purpose of the visit, according to Bolton, will be to urge progress on negotiations to denuclearize North Korea, adding the U.S. expects it to happen within a year. Bolton also referred to the historic Singapore summit between President Trump and Kim in June, saying the process of denuclearization remains their highest priority. During a cabinet meeting led by President Trump last Thursday, Pompeo said he hopes there can be a big step in nuclear negotiations with North Korea before too long. Pompeo emphasized that during the many months of negotiations, the regime conducted no nuclear or missile tests, adding that Washington is engaging in dialogue with Pyongyang for a brighter future for North Koreans. Pompeo has continually been expressing his hope for a breakthrough. With Pompeo's visit expected in the near future, both South Korea and the U.S. hope the trip will breathe fresh life into the denuclearization process, which seems to have stalled in recent weeks. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
An international aviation organization plans to visit North Korea next year. It's reportedly going to check on whether the regime has made efforts to keep its promise of suspending unannounced missile launches. This comes as Pyongyang gave consent to the on-site inspection. Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
North Korea has agreed to allow the Montreal-based International Civil Aviation Organization to conduct on-site safety inspections for international flights from the regime's missile launches. Citing an official at the organization, Japan's Kyodo News Agency reported Sunday that Pyongyang gave such an assurance in May when high-ranking officials from the UN agency visited the country. Accordingly, the ICAO plans to send personnel to the north sometime next year to verify whether the regime has taken appropriate measures to keep its pledge of refraining from launching ballistic missiles without prior notice. The 192-member organization has repeatedly condemned the North for unannounced missile launches as it poses a severe threat to planes flying in the region. Kyodo says such a move can be seen as an effort by the regime to improve ties with the international community while gaining trust over its pledge to halt such launches. The upcoming inspection, the second of its kind in a decade, is expected to include interviews with the North's aviation authorities with the aim of ensuring that the regime complies with international aviation regulations. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
BMW is set to recall over 100,000 cars in South Korea from Monday after a recent spate of engine fires. This comes as the local unit of the German auto giant said it will recall 42 different models after doing emergency safety checks on all models with an exhaust gas recirculation component, which the company blamed for the fires. According to industry sources, BMW's local unit is working round the clock to secure the parts from its headquarters in Germany with a plan to complete the recall this year. Last week, South Korea issued an order to suspend the operation of all BMW cars subject to recall that have not received safety inspections. Another week, another tournament win for a female golfer from South Korea. Taking the spoils this time was Park Sung-hyun. She defeated Lizette Salas on the first playoff hole on Sunday to capture the Indy Women in Tech Championship title. It's her third LPGA victory of the 2018 season, following her two previous tour wins in May and July. Parker raised a two-shot deficit over the final four holes and finished with a 4-under 68 to match Salas at 23-under 265 at Brickyard Crossing in the U.S. state of Indiana. The two-time major champion reclaims the #1 ranking in the world with the victory. Staying with the sports theme now, and the biggest sporting event in Asia swung into action on Sunday in the Indonesian cities of Jakarta and Palembang. South Korea, which is looking to finish second in the final medal standings, grabbed almost a dozen medals on day one of the 2018 Asian Games on Sunday, including finishing top of the podium twice in Taekwondo. Won Jong-hwan reports.
11 medals on day one of the Asian Games. South Korea won 2 golds, 3 silver and 6 bronze medals on Sunday. Taekwondo Poomsae practitioners delivered both of South Korea's gold medals, plus 1 silver and 1 bronze, to get the ball rolling in Jakarta. Poomsae requires Taekwondo practitioners to demonstrate the attacking and defensive moves of the Korean martial art. With nearly 1,000 spectators, including Indonesian President Joko Widodo and South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon, packed into the Jakarta Convention Center plenary hall, South Korea's gold medal run started with Kang Min-sung, who topped the men's individual Poomsae after beating his Iranian opponent by 0.08 points. South Korea snagged its second gold medal in the men's team Poomsae event. The sporting event is making its debut at these Asian Games, and South Korea, the birthplace of Taekwondo, was expected to sweep all 4 golds up for grabs, but it wasn't to be. In fencing, South Korea picked up 1 silver and 2 bronze medals. Park Sung-hyun, who captured silver in the men's individual épée on Sunday while suffering pain in both his legs. Park, currently ranked world number 3 and the reigning Olympic champion, fell to the 8th-ranked Dmitry Alexanin of Kazakhstan. With the defeat, South Korea missed out on a chance to become the first nation to win the men's individual épée gold in 3 straight Asian Games. Another silver medal was won in Palembang, the co-host city some 400 kilometers northwest of Jakarta, where Lee Dae-myung and Kim Min-jung finished second in the 10-meter air pistol mixed team event, falling only a few points behind the Chinese team. Making its Asian Games debut on Sunday, the unified Korean men's rowing team finished last in its qualification group. 2 athletes from the south and the north finished 4th among 4 teams in the lightweight men's 4 competition. The Koreas have assembled 2 more joint teams in rowing, lightweight men's 8, and women's double sculls. Elsewhere, they are competing under 1 flag in women's basketball and dragon boat racing. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스.
Nearly 350 people have died after massive floods hit the Indian state of Kerala. The flooding is said to be the worst in nearly a century. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Adam. So Adam, please fill us in on the latest.
Well, Mark, rescuers are working frantically to try to extract the thousands of people left stranded by the floods. Dozens of helicopters and hundreds of boats have joined those rescue efforts. They are also providing food and water supplies to those in isolated areas. The flooding came after about 2 weeks of torrential rain, which is common during the monsoon season, but India's weather authorities say Kerala was hit with substantially more rainfall than normal. There has been a lull in rainfall since Sunday and is said to likely ease over the next few days, giving officials a window of opportunity to accelerate their rescue operations. The floods have damaged hundreds of kilometres of roads and have caused disruptions to the region's train and air services. The extent of the damage will become clearer as the water subsides. Thousands of relief camps have been set up to provide temporary housing to hundreds and thousands of displaced residents. Officials are also focusing on preventing the outbreak of waterborne diseases. The Indonesian island of Lombok has been hit with yet another series of earthquakes as the region struggles to recover from weeks of tremors. The first measured magnitude 6.3, striking the island's northeast on Sunday. It was followed by a magnitude 6.9 tremor just a few hours later. At least 1 person was reported to have been killed in the first quake near the town of Belanting. More than 400 people have died as a result of recent earthquakes in the area, with more than 350,000 being displaced. The romantic comedy film Crazy Rich Asians dominated the US box office over the weekend with more than $25 million worth of tickets sold. It is the first Hollywood film in almost a quarter century with an all-Asian cast and has accumulated $34 million since its opening last Wednesday. Crazy Rich Asians stars Constance Wu, who plays a Chinese-American woman who learns her boyfriend, played by Henry Golding, hails from one of Singapore's wealthiest families. The film, based on the best-selling novel by Kevin Kwan, will be released globally in the coming weeks.
Good morning. Another scorching day is in the forecast for this Monday, and the Korean Peninsula is expecting the 19th typhoon of the season, Typhoon Salik, to hit the nation this week. Salik is expected to hit Jeju Island on Wednesday and move in a northeasterly direction to pass across the Korean Peninsula by Thursday. And along with typhoon, we are expecting some strong winds and heavy showers. Meanwhile, heat wave alerts have been expanded to more regions again, including here in the capital. And Mount Kumgang, the meeting place for the families from the south and the north, will have pleasant weather conditions under mostly sunny skies. But again, other than regions in the east, the rest of the country will have a hot and humid Monday afternoon at 34 degrees Celsius here in the capital, Daegu and Gyeongju this afternoon. And due to the effect of the typhoon, we'll see frequent showers this week, but that's not going to give us much relief from the heat. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, well, that's pretty much all the time we have for now. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll have plenty more programming coming up. We will, of course, have our next newscast at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. We'll have more coverage on the inter-Korean family reunions then. So until then, goodbye.